What's up guys, Josh here. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm pretty pissed off. In case you missed it, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson went down over the weekend in Dallas, Texas, streamed live on Netflix. Overall, around 60 million people watched this fight. It was an 8-round professional boxing match. At heavyweight, Jake Paul wins by unanimous decision, 80-72, 79-73, 79-73 with the judges' scorecards. Let me say first and up front, like anybody who follows the sport of boxing, I am a huge Mike Tyson fan. Growing up and hearing my dad, who's a boxing fan, he would talk to me about like, you know, one of my favorite, me and your mom, we used to buy Mike Tyson pay-per-views and they'd be over in 30 seconds and yada yada yada, just like tons of stories. So whenever he came out of retirement for an exhibition match in 2020 with Roy Jones Jr., it was almost the best outcome. Mike looked great for his age. He was 54 at the time. Roy Jones, who had only retired about 2 years before that fight, honestly got beat up for 8 rounds by Mike Tyson. No winner was declared because obviously an exhibition, but for a guy that was once a pariah in the sport of boxing, the second half of his career he was entirely a pariah, to go out there and have almost the right send-off that he deserved 15 years prior against Kevin McBride and guys like that, it was a great moment. It was a fitting end, and that should have been the last time he competed. Instead, he came out of retirement at 58 years old. Unlike the Roy Jones fight, this was a professionally sanctioned boxing match. Apparently, there were 14-ounce gloves, and there were 2-minute rounds, so it wasn't a normal boxing match, but the Texas Athletic Commission, they would sanction a fucking duel if it was illegal. So they sanctioned this as a professional boxing match, and that, frankly, is just embarrassing. And the fight as a whole was embarrassing. Before we break into the fight itself, I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to our friends over at BetMGM, MMA and boxing fans. If you want to go ahead and throw some money down on some fights that are upcoming, obviously we have Fury Usyk next month. We have UFC 310 going down next month in Las Vegas. We have a couple of fight nights in between then. If you want to follow the link down below, you can get up to $1,500 in free bets if you don't hit. If you have any issues, please contact 1-800-GAMBLER. But if you don't, and you want to go ahead and have some fun along with me and the other people who are betting on the fights, go ahead and follow that link down below, which is, again, up to $1,500 in free bets from our friends over at BetMGM. Look, man, the fight heading into it, if you watched our preview this week on the pod, I was not excited for this fight really at all. I was watching the fight with a couple casual fans, and they all had the same expectation that drew everybody in. They're like, man, Mike Tyson's gonna fuck this guy up, right? Like, Jake Paul doesn't know shit about boxing. That is true, but Mike Tyson is a damn near 6-year-old man. So with that in mind, I knew it was gonna be rough. I knew it was gonna be terrible. I knew he had probably 2 minutes to knock out Jake Paul, and if he couldn't do it, then fans were gonna be subjected to either a brutal knockout of Mike Tyson or him just getting battered around the ring for 8 rounds. In the end, we got neither of that. In fact, what we got was nothing even resembling a fight. Afterwards, Jake Paul admitting that he essentially carried Mike Tyson for the 8-round distance. Past round 3 or 4, you could tell he wasn't really going for a knockout. Now, admittedly, I don't think Jake Paul was doing this purely out of the nicest of his heart. I think he probably realized, hey, if I knock out a 58-year-old man, it's not going to look great for me. I also think he realized that if I go in there and try to knock out a 58-year-old man, I might get caught by a 58-year-old man. It's an even worse outcome than if I would have knocked him out. But still, I'm seeing a lot of people who are talking about this fight, and I'm seeing a lot of mixed opinions, and I have to put mine out there. I gotta be honest with you, man, this thing was embarrassing. It was not embarrassing for the fact that, you know, the fight sucked, because I expected the fight to suck. If you guys don't have to watch Jake Paul fights in the past, they've all sucked, for lack of a better term. I mean, the first fight with Tommy Woodley was okay. The second fight was terrible up until the knockout. The Tommy Fury fight was basically him just getting boxed around the ring for 8 rounds. But even Tommy Fury didn't throw much more than a jab. And then his fights with guys like Andre August and Ryan Borland, I mean, tomato cans. I mean, no, there was no interest in there whatsoever. The reality is that Jake Paul is not an entertaining boxer. So he's at a point in his career where he needs somebody to kind of be the draw for him. And that's why he got Mike Tyson. That's why 60 million people watched. I know Jake Paul's taking this big victory lap around social media, pretending that the reason why people watched this fight was for him, but that's fine. That's besides the point. I gotta be honest with you guys, I'm seeing a lot of people who are saying, Jake Paul, I gotta give him credit, man. He didn't knock out Mike Tyson, or think about all the good he's done for boxing. 60 million people watch Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor, and, Mario Barrios' fight, so on and so forth. But I want you guys to go ahead and think about this for a second. We get these fights every once in a while that are kind of freak show fights, right? Or not even freak show fights, but fights that draw in the public for one reason or another. In this case, it's Mike Tyson coming out of retirement after 20 years to face a guy who people don't think he's good, but he has a big name, right? I don't know why people think this is good for boxing at all. In fact, people are saying that it won't hurt boxing. I completely disagree, because you have fights like this that aren't fights. How is this going to incentivize new fans to come back and watch a fight? The people who watch this came away with the takeaway of, oh man, boxing's a joke. The same people who watch this are not going to be watching Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk 2 next month. It was a freak show fight, and there's only so much you could take away from one freak show fight. At the same time though, man, it wasn't even a fight. And I'm seeing people go out there and give him credit, like, oh, he didn't finish Mike. I gotta give him some respect. He didn't hurt a legend. Motherfucker, he's the promoter. He's the fighter and the promoter. He went out there and booked a fight with a 58-year-old man who we found out after the fight nearly died in June because of, he had a medical emergency, and the fight got booked anyway because apparently Texas just doesn't give a fuck. Look, man, it was one of the most disappointing nights for boxing, because the reality is that you have freak show fights like this occasionally that they can draw in new fans. I do think Jake Paul has brought in a couple of fans from his fights in the past, but I think this probably brings an end to the Jake Paul experiment, at least for a long time. You got the guy parading out there with this. He's got his own world title that he's throwing on his shoulder like he won the fucking thing. That's just disgusting, man. I mean, for a guy to be, he's been boxing now for 6 years, and for the whole thing to be, oh, my pinnacle is fighting a nearly 60-year-old man, it's just embarrassing. It's disgusting. And Mike Tyson's a grown man. You can't absolve him of his responsibility in this. But at the same time, you go to any fighter from the past, and the vast majority of them are going to want to relive their glory days. That's why MMA retirements, that's why boxing retirements, they never last long. These people are addicted to fighting. It's like a drug. The high that you get from competing in boxing or fighting in general. So for Mike Tyson, you can't absolve him of all his responsibility. At the same time, you offer a 58-year-old man a chance to relive his glory days and make $20 million, he's probably going to take it. But somebody like Jake Paul should fucking know better. So let's also talk about one quick thing as well. This fight has broken my brain, but one of the reasons why too is the fan response. Everybody hated the fight. That's not really much of a surprise, but I'm seeing people who are trying to cope by saying that the fight was rigged and that Mike Tyson, past the first round, he didn't throw any punches. Guys, I don't know how to tell you this. Boxing is fucking hard. If you've never gone into a boxing gym or even any sort of martial arts, right? I grew up doing martial arts. I still try to hit the bag once in a while, try to keep myself in shape, that sort of thing. Fighting's fucking hard. And I think because of the fact that fighting isn't a thing that the average person does, I feel like the average guy has probably picked up a baseball every once in a while, right? A football. They've played basketball in high school. The vast majority of people don't get into fights, so whenever they go out there and they see Mike Tyson, like, oh man, why isn't he throwing punches? It must be rigged. No, he's a 58-year-old man. Fighting is hard. The fighting cardio is so much different from that of going out there for a run or going out there for a swim or going out on the football field. It's significantly different. I feel like that's one of the reasons why, because I'm seeing threads like this that are just driving me insane. Like, the fight wasn't rigged, it just sucked because Mike Tyson is almost 60 years old. We'll talk about this more on the podcast whenever it comes out later this week. But at the same time, man, I had to come out here, get this off my chest because, man, I'm just pissed off. And I feel like it's fights like this that actively hurt boxing, because I see people say you can't make a takeaway. You can't take so much away from one fight. But every once in a while, boxing is a very niche sport. It's very rare that we get an opportunity to have a fight like this that can draw the casual audience in, to bring in 60 million people, 70,000 people attended the fight down in Dallas. And unless you're a hardcore fan, you're not going to be walking away from this thinking, oh, like, I have a newfound love for boxing. Even the co-main event. Like, the co-main event showed everything wrong with boxing too. if it was a bad decision between Katie Taylor and Madison Arnold. I didn't think it was the worst robbery I've ever seen, but that's just because boxing is so, like, such a corrupt sport whenever it comes to decisions like this, that, like, I'm like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Like, I've seen worse, you know, but the average fan is not going to watch a result like that because the fight itself was a banger. But then to have the result be a bad decision, it's like, oh man, why am I watching this for? If the fight's good, but the winner isn't crowned in the right way, why would I care? If I'm going out there to watch Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, and afterwards they admit it wasn't even a real fight, why should I care about this sport? If you guys enjoyed this video though, we'll have a new podcast out on Friday. I'm at Josh and Angel Ortega on Twitter, at Courtside Soundoff for all things related to the show. Once again, shout out to our friends over at BetMGM. Outside of that though, hope you guys enjoyed the fights.